I caught my wife cheating after 20 years of love, so I confronted her. Reddit stories cheating. I caught my wife cheating after 20 years of love, so I confronted her fairly. Partner and ended his marriage. Now my life is in shambles. I didn't notice the signs that were there. Here are a handful that come to mind. She began sending strange late-night texts. She frequently went out for drinks with her pals. I was happy that she was being friendly even if this was not her usual behavior. She attended yoga once a week, but it appears that she was not compensated because she assisted with setup and cleanup and the instructor was one of her co-workers. In my opinion, she was also quite rigid for someone who practiced yoga. Callers who are unknown. Hang up. If we were near each other's phones we would frequently answer them. She had an unidentified caller on multiple occasions who would end the conversation as soon as I responded. Although we received a lot of spam calls, the calls were typically from telemarketers or debt collectors trying to locate the number's prior owner. It's rarely a hang-up. I was not expected to return until tonight because I work out of town. Tomorrow was our scheduled departure for a 2-week road trip. I came home yesterday afternoon because work was sluggish since we've been so busy this summer with family and friends. This trip was meant to offer us some alone time. I didn't recognize the truck in my driveway when I got home recently. My neighbor inquired about my opinion of the new truck, but I assumed he was wrong and didn't give it much thought. I had a horrible instinct as soon as I saw the feeling was there, and it was powerful. Even though I loved and trusted my wife, and I crept to the window of our bedroom on the side of the house. It was open, and as I approached, I could hear them. My worst suspicion was validated when I peered out the window on my bed. They were straight there to leave. I've been resisting the temptation to do something I'll later regret. Right now, I'm having a hard time caring what happens to me. I spent the night in my family's cabin and drank all that was there. I was about to confront her on my way home today, but I changed my mind. I'm not prepared. Anger is all I can feel. The violence, it is all I can think of. About right now, I'm not in a good enough state to see her. I'm currently back at the cabin. I've spent the last hour gazing at a 60 bottle of don't want to become wasted and make poor choices, but I do want to get wasted and forget this. I am aware that this is a pivotal time in my life and that what I do in the days ahead will determine how I live the rest of my days. I need assistance. I'm contacting strangers because I'm not ready to talk to friends or relatives. F this planet at the time being, but I have made the decision not to consume it. My brother is on his way and should be here in a few hours according to the phone call I made. My wife just texted me to tell me how much she loves me and how excited she is for our trip. I still haven't replied. In addition to my brief update, I wanted to clarify a few remarks and queries that continue to come up. I feel much better today. If you can't tell, the pain subsided almost entirely, although I still feel like I've been hit in the stomach. I've started to look ahead. I don't think this is correct. Am I just incredibly resilient, or is this a sign of things to come? To shed some light on the queries and remarks I've received, I've included some cliff notes. When I mentioned wife and best friend, I meant the dual roles my wife and I had in our relationship. I didn't even know the other guy, let alone consider him my best friend. I didn't get a good look at him. But based on my fleeting impression and the fact that I saw his car, I don't think it's someone I know. We are childless. However, we intend to have them shortly. We recently sold our home, and when the new owners move in September, we plan to relocate closer to my place of employment like he did for me. I will express my gratitude to my neighbor in a subtle way. After a long work trip, I must admit that coming home to Willow may be one of the worst things. I sincerely apologize for what occurred to you. As for us, we're just getting started. So grab a seat and let's get started. With the first update, my brother and I had a lengthy conversation when he got there. He has been my actual best friend. And I've come to learn that I should never forget that, and that he will always support me without passing judgment, just as I would support him despite the fact that we occasionally argue. He truly sets the bar for what true friendship is. I chose to reply to my wife's text yesterday night as I was meant to be at home. It made sense for me to just be texting her because we are not permitted to have phones on the premises. She is aware that I may easily slip in a few texts. I informed her in writing that I would not be able to call her until the end of the weekend because I had to travel to one of my company's remote locations. I informed her that I will reschedule. After canceling all of the reservations, I rented a romantic bed and breakfast on the Vineyard, and she said she could bring her best friend over this weekend. I was aware that she didn't want me to believe that her best buddy would be attending since it was non-refundable. I informed her that I had already given it to my brother and his wife, who would reimburse me in a month. I canceled every reservation this morning with the exception of the romantic one. I'm going with my brother. Luckily, the hotel allowed us to move from the honeymoon suite to a 2-bedroom. This just ended up being a long overdue fishing excursion with my brother because there is a really great lake and boat rentals close by. I am therefore free this weekend. That reduced my worry and gave me more time to reflect because I won't have to write or speak to her for a few days. Right now I'm considering getting a divorce. There's really no other way for me to see it. My brother is in favor of this. However, he has requested me to talk about to someone for a few weeks. On Monday, his wife is willing to speak with me through a friend of hers who works as a couples counselor. At least it might help me sort out some of this muddle, but I don't see it changing my mind. In order to at least get ready for what I believe is inevitable, I am also starting to talk to lawyers and taking a lot of advice from this place. I want to do it correctly. Don't think she would try to cheat on me, but I also don't think she would try to do so I think I should be ready for anything. That was a brief update, but it gives us a glimpse into the ops' current thoughts. Let's move on to the following update, which is quite extensive and contains a wealth of information. Now let's go on to the last few days. Have seen a lot of events to go to the Tibetan breakfast on the vineyard. My brother Matt and I drove for over 5 hours. I am really grateful that he has supported me during this time. It helped me get my thoughts straight. Although it was more of a venting session, our fishing trip wasn't very successful. The proprietor of the B&B provided us with some food after we both caught a few trout that we had to release because of their size. Those were quite successful. We took a car back to Matt's house on Sunday. He lives almost an hour away from my home in the town next door. Jen, Matt's wife, was waiting for us when we got there, and we all sat and opened a bottle of white wine that was stored in the cooler for me. The weekend officially ended at this point. Jen informed me that she chose to spy on my wife while we were abroad. She informed me that the man spent the entire night in my house on Friday, but she arrived on Saturday morning just as he was about to leave. She located the apartment where he resided after following him home on Saturday night while she was texting me to tell me how much she loved and missed me. My wife stayed over there, Jen claimed, to be dividing her time between stalking my wife and visiting relatives in my town. She claimed to have caught my wife on Sunday morning as she was leaving his apartment and snapped a few photos of them cuddling and kissing before she got into her car. I'd rather not see them. For me, that essentially sealed the deal. If she can so easily go from telling me she loves me and being with another guy, I doubt I could ever trust her again. Nevertheless, I made the decision that I would not react hastily because of my feelings. I must maintain my composure. Jen then informed me that Sharon would be joining us for supper. Jen made an appointment for me with a psychotherapist named Sharon. To be clear, this was my first encounter with my wife, and she has never met her. We got along well, and Sharon was really pleasant girl. Following dinner, Sharon and I took the dogs for a stroll around Matt's neighborhood while also having a little private chat. Sharon was quite helpful, since she listened well and gave me the impression that I didn't need to be cautious about being that open about how I felt. Was therapeutic. Even though I get along well with my brother, this was something new and much needed. I enjoy blogging on Reddit for the same reason. It's a way for me to vent and clear out some of the chaos in my thoughts. The only practical advice Sharon provided me during our hour-long walk was to not put off talking to my wife. It will be more difficult to discuss this with her the longer I wait, she said. She explained that right now I need clarity more than anything else, and my wife is the only one who can provide it. Janet and Matt invited me to remain with them for as long as needed. Later that evening, I talked to my manager, who was able to arrange for me to live in corporate housing because I'm aware that Matt and I have a time limit on living together. Although I had to leave on days off, I had been staying there every other week for some time. If I needed to, he was able to arrange for me to remain full-time for a few months later. That week I made the decision to reschedule with Sharon for the first session. I thought talking would be enough, and she agreed. I lay in bed all night Sunday trying to figure out how to go about this. I found this difficult because even the hypothetical situation in my mind made me feel depressed or angry. I made the decision to wing it. Normally I perform well under pressure. I got up the following morning and bid Matt and Jen farewell. What if he's there when I get home? I asked myself as I drove home. I then reasoned that it would probably only make me feel even more irate than I had been a few days prior. I choose to start with a drive by my wife's automobile, and his truck was not present. After going inside and gathering a number of necessities and items I didn't want to part with, I proceeded to the man's residence. His truck was there, but so was her car. To find out where she was, I made the decision to write her, "I'm getting groceries." She said I drove past the grocery shop and verified she was there because I don't trust her at the moment. Admitting that I did that makes me feel so bad. But that's the only way I can be sure of anything, and it breaks my trust. We need to discuss. So I contacted her again and implored her to simply come home. What's wrong? She replied in writing. I just replied that she must be prepared. To be honest, before shutting off my phone 15 minutes later, she arrived home. As usual, she came over to give me a kiss and an embrace. When she entered, I turned my back on her. She repeated, "What's wrong?" to me. I therefore advised her to start telling the truth to me. She seemed not to understand what I was talking about. I replied, "Okay, if you can't be honest, then I'm leaving at this point." She became frantic and asked, "What are you talking about?" "Yoga." I assumed that was a beginning. She told me that she hadn't been attending yoga. When I asked her what she was talking about, "Where you were going if you weren't going to yoga," I asked her. Claimed that because she had been so worried lately she was taking walks to decompress. What has been causing you so much stress, and why did you feel the need to lie to me about what you were doing so? I inquired. She said she didn't know how to tell me and attributed it to the transfer preparations. I persisted in pressing ing, saying, "So you decided to lie. Why did you feel the need to let me know that you were taking a stroll to relieve stress?" I responded that I wasn't stressed when she stated she didn't mean to lie and that she was concerned she would be making me feel more stressed. She didn't appear to be telling me everything. "What do you mean?" she asked, looking at me in amazement. "I think you're lying about more than just skipping yoga," I remarked, glancing at her. "I'm asking you to be honest once more. If you continue to lie, this won't work. Because you have already lied to me." "Oh, are you talking about last weekend when I went for drinks with some friends and came home late?" She followed up on her attempt to deflect by claiming she was at a loss for words. "I sensed something that disturbed you." I didn't know she went out late or drank drinks. I questioned her whether she was lying again, or if it was what she actually did while I was at work a few hours away. She explained that although she went out for drinks that evening, she didn't run into her purported best friend. In response, I inquired, "Who did you see?" "No one. I just drank alone, she claimed. Naturally I wasn't buying this, and I was getting impatient. I therefore questioned her. That's something now that you are drinking by yourself? Yeah, maybe I have a problem. She replied in response that she had one final chance to be honest before I left, so I told her to get to the bottom of her drinking problem. She claimed she didn't know what else to say after giving me a glance. I simply got up and walked away. I usually take a drive to keep away from her when we argue. She likely assumed this was the same, but then she noticed that I had taken my Xbox clothes and toiletries. She started blowing up my phone at that point. There's nothing more to say, I told her, because I offered her an opportunity to be honest, and she didn't. She pleaded with me to come home so we could discuss things face to face. She claimed she didn't know what she believed she'd done or why I was so unhappy. She reaffirmed her love for me and her vow to never harm me. I felt a new ache in my chest. Just listening to her say that the words were always consoling, and I blindly believed them. It felt like a dull sharp knife cutting through my heart in the worst way. Right now I hung up because I couldn't take it any longer before I was prepared to respond once more. She called back roughly 40 times. Did you talk to Karen, the best friend? She asked. This time she responded, come home. I don't want to say this over the phone. When I asked why, in order to lower my heart rate, I agreed and continued driving for a little while longer. I then returned home. I assumed you spoke to Karen, she began. She went on to describe how they went out for drinks a few weeks earlier when I was at work, but I just gazed at her when a few men began purchasing drinks for them. They simply cooperated. One of the guys tried to kiss her as they were leaving, but she quickly retreated and informed them that she was married. She then expressed her regret and wanted to inform me, but she was a fool and chose to keep it a secret from me. She also informed me that without asking, Karen provided his friend my wife's number after hooking up with the other guy. Since then he has texted her a few times, but she has never responded in writing. After all of that, I just asked her to show me her phone, and she did. Other than her mother and me, there were no texts at all. This was new to her, because she never deletes her texts. When I investigated the deleted images, I discovered one of a guy I didn't recognize even though her photos were clean. She told me it was the man who attempted to kiss her. When I inquired who it was, why did you take a picture of? I asked her again once more. She placed the blame on herself, claiming that I was just being out, that it's not a valid excuse, and refused to allow her to get away with it. I pressed her once more to explain her actions. She claimed not to know. Is that all you want to tell me, or is there more? I inquired, growing weary of the whole situation. By this point that was all she could think of, she said. I went out again. I didn't want to face any more hints of the truth. I climbed into my truck and headed out. She tried to stop me as she hurried outside, but I was already out of her grasp. After having my lunch and trying to think of what to do next, I went to the adjacent park and just sat on my tailgate. As I sat there, I started to recall other things I should have known better, like the times I worked a weekend shift and went to bed early along with some of her girlfriends. My wife went out to the club. She wasn't home when I woke up at 4 in the morning. I tried calling her several times, but nobody picked up. She called me back about half an hour later to ask if I could come get her. She informed me that they were unsuccessful in their attempt to hail a cab. When I picked her up, her buddy was approached by a pair of men who wanted to stop at home before offering them a ride. Her married buddy entered a room with one of the guys. When they arrived at his residence, according to my wife, she looked for her for a long before giving up and waiting with the roommates in the kitchen while enjoying a drink. When I tried to call her, she said she didn't hear her phone ring. Into a fight over this, and she ended her friendship with her friend because she was assumed that was the end of it. She once made the trip to another city to see a close friend. A scheduled girls' night was held. 4 of the girls were in their pajamas watching movies while intoxicated. That's what I was told. Anyway, she then gave me a good night call at around 1 in the morning. She kept telling me that they were having a nice girls' night during our 20-minute conversation. Then in the distance I heard a man's voice. She initially denied hearing anything. When I questioned who it was, then loudly it occurred once again. Oh yeah, ex-friend took a couple of guys with her, she answered, unable to deny it. Everyone in this place is furious about it. She was 3 hours away and intoxicated. She forced me to put my trust in her once more. We discussed that, as well as her refusal to inform me of their presence. She vowed never to place herself in such a predicament again. That obviously didn't stick. I was prepared to try this one last time. After recalling all of those things and our discussions about them, my phone rang nearly instantly after I switched it back on. She was yelling for me to come home. When I responded that I returned home by car, as soon as I stepped inside, she was there, crying uncontrollably. She kept saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, while seated on the couch. What are you sorry for? Asked her. She started to rock crazily back and forth. She confessed to lying about the man who attempted to kiss her after it took her a solid 5 minutes to collect her breath enough to talk. I asked her to explain what had transpired. After giving her a quick glance, she claimed that evening the 4 of them returned to his house and played about. Even though I knew there was more, I felt lightheaded simply listening to her say it. There seemed to be a million people talking into my ears at once, and the room seemed to be getting smaller. I believed that I was experiencing a panic. Went to the restroom and washed my face with cold water. What exactly did you do? I asked her again. I forced her to do it. Even though she attempted to avoid it, she went on to say that she gave him her head after he touched her. Was that it? I questioned her, knowing it wasn't all of it, and she said yes. At this point, I was furious. I informed her that I would not longer play the trickle truth game and that we would either stop talking or she would have to tell me everything at once. It took her a few more minutes to talk. When she started crying once more, she now admits that they had another encounter and shared a bed, then right away I'm so sorry. I will stop at nothing. To make up for this because I love you just the one time I asked her knowing the truth if she tells me the truth I should please give her a chance to do everything she can to make up for it she continued after pausing. I promised to give it some thought, and now the whole truth was revealed. She acknowledged that it had been an affair for over a month. And that they had been having I was out of town for work. She informs me that he is married and that their divorce is imminent. Does he know you're married? I questioned her, and yes, she replied. Do you think our marriage is failing if he was having an affair because his is failing? I then questioned. No, I don't. I think ours is failing, she responds. Before going on to say I'm so dumb I despise myself. Don't leave me, please, I can make this right. How would you do that? I inquired, and she stated she would do anything I requested. What would fix this for you if you were in my shoes or the shoes of your affair partner's wife? I questioned her. She said that it would be resolved if she knew the truth and could believe that I meant what I was saying. Then she said, I'm trustworthy. I made a mistake and will not do it again. Would you want to know the truth if you were his wife? I questioned her. Yes. She replied. Then fix this, I said. Asked, do you want me to call his wife? After giving me a look if you believe that's what she would want. I said she attempted to call but never received a response. Her cell phone rang a couple of minutes later. Karen's work was stated as the name. I knew it wasn't Karen because of the shocked expression on her face as that was her. I questioned it. She said it was him. When I replied, he said, oops, I must have the wrong number, being the coward that he is not. This is the husband of the girl you have been having an affair with. I said she has something to tell you, so I'm going to let you talk to her. Handed the phone to her. She claims that she told him the whole truth about everything. I know that they were only having a brief affair and that he should never get in touch with her again. Before she hung up and asked him, what divorce lawyer are you using? I demanded to see the phone. I'm not getting divorced for it. He responded, why did you tell my wife? You were? I asked him. I didn't, he stated. I then requested to talk to his wife, since I believed she should be aware of this just as much as I am pleased. Dude, he said, I didn't realize she was married. Don't let a mistake destroy my marriage. You ruined mine over a mistake. I shot back. It is only right that I inform his spouse since she was at work. He begged me not to tell her, promising to tell her everything when she got home. I hung up after saying, all right, you do that. Then turned to my wife and asked her whether she knew the name and place of employment of his wife. She did. My wife called to let me know she was at work. She managed to get her on the phone and instructed her to sit down. This woman stated she will phone my wife back from her car as she was about to depart for the day. She did. What's going on? Was the first question she asked. My wife informed her that she didn't want to start any mishaps and that she had something awful to share with her. Please don't drive. She, Ed, the wife, was obviously alarmed and inquired as to the whereabouts of her affair companion. My wife informed her that he was currently in their apartment and doing well. My wife went on to add, I just wanted to let you know that we have been having an affair for the past month. Since I'm currently coming clean to my husband, I felt you should be treated with the same difference. After a minute or so of silence, the affair partner's wife claimed she would find out who my wife was if this was some sick joke. She hung up after that. Karen texted my wife less than 10 minutes later, saying, thanks. You just ruined my life. I picked up the phone and replied, you just destroyed 2 marriages and 4 lives. Remember that, you bit of junk. You were to blame for this. My wife pleaded with me to stay with her for the next hour. She promised that she would always be by my side. Thanks to the comments, this was just what I expected. Then as a reward, she suggested that we take that trip. She said we need time away from my work schedule has been separating us lately, so we need to get together and spend some quality time. And just what I thought she would say. I went, but she wasn't expecting me to inform her. Additionally, she wasn't prepared for me to inform her that I already had a counseling appointment scheduled. She most certainly didn't anticipate my telling her that I had slept with her in my own bed. She probably didn't anticipate that I would have a hotel reservation in place. She sobbed on the floor when I told her all of that. She began to complain that she didn't deserve to live. She advised me to break up with her immediately since she is too awful to be with anybody else. That was how it continued for some time. I listened to her justifications for 4 hours straight, during which time she tried to give me a hug, a cuddle, or even a head if I would just remain and work things out with her. When I finally phoned Karen, I informed her that her unfaithful buddy was her to come watch her. After that I departed. I haven't spoken to her since that incident that occurred about a full day ago. All day long, she has been phoning and texting me all day long. Her friends and family have been phoning and texting me. Each one has a different justification or request for sympathy. The only person to write to me was her father, who assured me that he would always love me like a son no matter what and that I should act in my own best interests. I had my first good cry since this whole thing started when I read it. My counselor Sharon and I have appointments tomorrow and Thursday respectively, though I'm unsure of everything until it happens. I believe I apologize. I know where this is headed. For the long story, it's just a good method to get things out once more. Thank you very much for all of the letters and comments. I feel so much less damaged and more hopeful because of the folks who are sharing their own tales like this. I truly appreciate all of your words and actions on my behalf. That concluded the update. Before I offer my commentary, we have one last update. Regarding this story, all I can say at this point is that I believe the op did a fantastic job of persuading his unfaithful wife to tell the truth finally. Update. What well done he is? Let's proceed. To the last update now. It was a pretty eventful week. I've been alternating between my brother's house and camp. I only stay on nights when I have an early appointment because I want to be as unobtrusive as possible. I've benefited much from my employer's permission to take a few weeks off for personal reasons. I've kept going to see the therapist Sharon. So far I've seen her 3 times. I feel better now than I did a week ago. Therefore, even if I don't think our visits are very fruitful, I do think they're a nice opportunity for me to get some things off my mind. I will therefore continue for the time being. Last Thursday I had a conversation with a lawyer. I compiled a list of all assets and financial information including debt under their guidance. After that I went to the bank and requested that they put a stop on our account so that no one could take money out of them without the other person being there. This won't prevent either of us from obtaining new money, just the old shared money, because we both have our paychecks deposited into our own account. Although it's now too late, the lawyer did advise me to wait to confront her until after I've served her the papers. I was getting calls and texts from my wife, her family and her friends almost nonstop throughout the entire week. My sister-in-law hosted a family gathering at the cabin this past weekend. I went and had to tell my family the news. Now that it's public knowledge, I can incorporate them into my recuperation process. Up until about 8 p.m. on Saturday night, everything was going as smoothly as it could be when my wife's automobile, my dad, brother, and I arrived. Gathered around the fire mat, my brother assured me he would handle everything in order to avoid being seen from the driveway. My dad and I made the decision to take a stroll around the property. I could hear my wife yelling at my brother to move out of the path as we were just about to enter the woodland. She was accompanied by a few of her pals who were also shouting at Matt and urging him to shut up. He tried his hardest, but in the end they were too much for him. She pushed past him and came running toward us. She must have noticed us going in that direction. I stated I would handle her even though my dad offered to handle it. My wife, who I'll just call Kate, came racing to me and started crying. I didn't stop her from giving her a hug right away, but I also didn't give her one in return. She pleaded with me simply to talk to her. I accepted, and in order to have some peace, we strolled around the property's trails. The other guy's wife has left him. According to Kate, told me that he blamed her for everything and himself over the phone. She says she hasn't spoken to him since, telling him to simply do it. She then takes out a piece of paper and begins enumerating the ways she intends to make amends with me. She provided all of these services on the first day, including in couples therapy, and then she surprised me. I don't want to continue living this way, she says. She stated that she wants us to both quit our jobs and go abroad and open the small beach bar we've always discussed. She claimed that if I accompanied her, she would depart immediately. In order to contextualize this is all that came to mind for the previous week. As I tried to picture my life after the divorce, I assumed that everything would have to be restarted. I might as well add another element to the tremendous change I'm currently going through and just do what I want. I was reminded of how much I missed her and wanted to be with her. When I heard her express the same desire, I knew I had to cut the conversation short. At that point, her buddies were waiting for her when I escorted her back to her car. I informed her that although I couldn't guarantee anything more, I would be open to talking on the phone. She felt enough at ease to depart. Since then, we've talked on the phone every night, but it never changes. She sobs and pleads with me for another opportunity. I hung up after becoming upset with her for what she had done. Right now, I'm having a terrible time missing her. It's difficult to talk to someone who was my best friend for decades. It is heartbreaking to realize that all of our hopes and dreams have been thrown away. The only thing I want is to simply move and start fresh somewhere else. She wrecked it. Even though I wanted that to be with her, she took that away from me. That's all. We only have that information from Op. With any luck, he was able to complete the divorce, relocate to a beach and open his bar. At least we know that the affair partner received his just desserts and that he was able to confront his unfaithful wife. I thus hope that the original poster is content with his life and enjoying himself wherever he is, as I wrap up this film, which has already been long enough. In addition, how many of you would like to see a beach bar like the one the original poster mentioned? That is one of my retirement fantasies, and I'm aware of